Hi, I'm Randy Sullivan from the Bourbon Real Talk podcast. Welcome to the Whiskey Vault. Now, this may seem a little unfamiliar to you because I'm sure you're used to seeing Daniel, but Daniel's away from videoing because he's taking a little break from drinking and he's asked me to step in while he's out. This was a huge honor for me because Daniel was one of the inspirations for me when I first got into whiskey content creating, and he asked me to do a video about a special bottle that I have. And I thought that I would share with you about this dusty old bottle of Jack Daniels. This is one of the most special bottles that I have in my entire collection, which you can see behind me. This bottle is actually from 1984. That is the year stamp that's on the bottom of the bottle. And it also corresponds with the time frame that Jack Daniels had their black label at 90 proof. So currently the Jack Daniels black label, old number 7, is an 80 proof product. But back in 1984, they were still bottling it at 90 proof. And that's what we have here. Let's get into this bad boy and kind of taste it up. So I don't know how familiar you are with old bottles of whiskey, but I find that most of them have some pretty similar tasting notes, which makes for an interesting conversation. So on the nose, I do get that butterscotch. And actually, I find that's a pretty common tasting note for old bottles of whiskey. Let's say 80s and older, 1980s and older. It's very common for their vanilla characteristics and their caramelized wood sugar flavors to start to move more in a direction of a butterscotch. Let's see what it tastes like. It's actually still quite lovely. Does have a lot of that vanilla, a lot of that caramelized sugar flavor of that butterscotch, a little bit of the banana ruts that we're used to from a Jack Daniels product. Not as nutty, but a hint of that common dusty flavor that I get that is leather. Some might even characterize a flavor of graphite. It's a little bit dusty, musty, smells a little bit like a basement. And that's an interesting conversation to have, because if you have a bottle of Jack Daniels from the early 1980s and a bottle of Wild Turkey and a bottle of Jim Beam, they probably did not have very many similarities in profile whenever they originally released in the early 1980s. But after that many years in the bottle, they all start to converge with these similar dusty notes. And that should indicate to us that there's something that's happening inside these bottles over time that is not unique to the distillery and their process. It's something that generally happens to bourbon whenever it's in a bottle. And I've talked with some chemists about it, and they don't exactly know what causes that convergence of flavor, but I know a lot of people who've developed their palates to like it. Now, the reason why this particular bottle is so important to me is because we found this in my late grandfather's closet after his passing, and being the person in the family that's well known for loving whiskey, they gave me both of the bottles that they found. The other bottle that they found in his closet was this guy right here. The brand of whiskey is called Antique. Another connection is my late brother Sean, which is going to lead into my whole ethos and what I do on my podcast. My brother Sean was in the Army. He was in 82nd Airborne. You can see a bottle here that somebody sent me to commemorate that. And he unfortunately was injured during jump school, and he developed a habit with opioids to try and deal with this pain. But before any of that happened, I didn't really drink until I was about 28 years old. And I didn't realize it, but my brother's drink of choice in the military was Jack Daniels. And I developed a love for Jack Daniels early on in my whiskey drinking days. And the greatest memory that I have with my brother was a night that we went out and we had Jack Daniels, and we actually watched the movie Borat. and he took me to go get food afterwards at Waffle House, and it was my first late night drinking Waffle House experience. Our waitress told us that she got run over by a truck the night before, and some crazy people came in, and all kinds of hilarity ensued. And it was such a great memory that I actually ended up telling it at my brother's funeral, because unfortunately, his opioid addiction led to him taking his own life. And that is very sad, and there's nothing that I can do about that. But it did lead me to want to find ways to bring connection into people's lives, because after my brother's passing, I saw how he had kind of lost a lot of the social connections that keep people bound to this world. And I started to get more involved in the whiskey enthusiast world because I was looking for connection. And then I saw how whiskey was bringing people together. And that motivated me to want to create the Bourbon Real Talk podcast, because I figure if I can get you connected to whiskey, the whiskey will do the rest of the job and get you connected to others. And I ended up starting a whiskey Facebook group that is a troll-free environment called Bourbon Real Talk Community. It's absolutely free. You can go on there and interact with other people, and there's lots of great opportunities to connect in there. There's in-person meetups being coordinated through there. There's online events that people are doing. We do a lot of fundraisers. There's general whiskey discussion and things like that. And that was going so well, and we were so efficient whenever we did fundraisers, that I ended up starting a nonprofit called Live Stay Project that is a 501c3 suicide prevention and intervention nonprofit. And all of that is administered inside of the whiskey world. And so it just goes to show that whiskey can bring people together. This bottle is, in my mind, a time capsule that binds me to my grandfather and to my brother. And it helped me to develop my new mission in life, to use whiskey to create community and connection and to bring people together. So I've told you a little bit about myself. I hope you enjoyed my little episode. If you want to find out more about my channel, you can do that by heading over to bourbonrealtalk.com, or you can look up Bourbon Real Talk on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. I always end all of my episodes with a positive message. I've explained to you kind of what our ethos is, but I realized whenever I started to see some of the negative side of enthusiast groups online and those trolls that would be hateful to each other, that if they can show hate to somebody else, even though they don't really know them, there's nothing that keeps me from showing love to someone else, even though I don't really know you. And I end every episode the same way, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you're unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I hope to see you in the future on Bourbon Real Talk. And I'm really glad you're here.